Happy Sunday, everybody, or happy Palm Sunday if you're watching this on the day it came out. Today's the day on the church calendar when we celebrate Christ coming into Jerusalem and everyone praising him right before killing him. All right, today we're finally finishing up season 1 episode of The Sopranos called Down Neck. I know, I feel like we've been on this episode for a really long time. Now, this dish is not actually mentioned in the episode. If you've been following me for a while, and I hope you will, click subscribe in the bottom corner if you haven't yet. But if you have been following me for a while, you know I'm going through every dish in the series or every dish in the 2 cookbooks, the Soprano Family Cookbook and Entertaining with the Sopranos. If you watched my last episode on Pizza Rustica, you know that this episode is tied to the Many Saints of Newark, and we compare and contrasted them.
What's the matter with you cops? Can't bring a kid to an amusement park no more?
Daddy!
It's okay, baby. It's okay, honey. You go home to mommy, sweetheart.
Vafangu, why don't you go lock up the Munyans? They're the ones that are burning down Newark.
It's Johnny Boy Soprano.
He went to jail?
No, he came home in a couple hours.
Hey, Livia! Look who's home! What happened? Stopped at Nasto's, got you some cherry vanilla.
That didn't take long. You must be in good with the uppity.
Go out there did soon, huh? They want to burn the city down. You hold the door, huh?
Daddy!
Daddy's go home.
Daddy!
Go home. Take the bus.
John Francis Soprano. On the charge of assault with a deadly weapon, I hereby sentence you to no more than 5 and no less than 2 years in Rahway State Prison.
Hey, let him through. Hey, Paulie, how's your mom, huh?
Johnny.
Hey, baby, what?
Did the surprise work?
Hey, I'll tell you what surprised me. Yeah, shines on the block, huh?
You got it right in front of everybody?
Yeah, jeez.
You know, just like always.
Ah, for nap. Come on. What's the matter with you? Go give your father a proper hello, Stunai. Come here.
I missed you, Dad.
Miss you too, kid.
I made your favorite pizza again, even though it's not Easter.
Last episode we did Pizza Rustica, also known as Pizza Gran, also known as Easter pie. So that was a savory Easter pie. And it's called, part of the reason why it's called Easter pie is because after a Lent season of not being able to eat meat and all this rich dairy and all the stuff that goes into it, it's nice to splurge on Easter when Lent's over and you can eat all these things that are in Easter pie again. This week we're gonna do Easter dessert pie, also known as Pizza Gran. As we see in the Many Saints of Newark, Livia made Easter pie. And I think we can assume that it's Pizza Rustica because it sounds like she says Pizza Gran. Whatever the case, we're knocking out both of them just to say that we covered both our bases. And besides, next week is Easter, so we might as well try both, right? If you haven't watched last episode, I'll put a link in the description below. But moving on to this week's episode. So, it's gonna be in Entertaining with the Sopranos, page 130. Get your own copy on Amazon. This one, we're gonna put to the side this week. And for this recipe, you need a 1.5 sticks of butter, some confectioner sugar, aka powdered sugar, a whole egg, 2 egg yolks, orange zest, it says a teaspoon, I put in more, cinnamon, salt, and flour, and a mixing bowl. The wine's not part of the recipe. That's just for me, because I love Stella Rosa by the Riboli family. I also need to mention right off the bat, the very first step in this is actually going to be the hulled wheat. That's hulled wheat, not whole wheat. I went ahead and used farro because it's a farro. Somebody in the comments go ahead and correct my pronunciation. It's a type of hulled wheat, and it's an Italian form of whole wheat. It's an Italian dish, so I figured might as well use the Italian whole wheat. So you take a 1/2 cup of this, cover it in water, and leave it in the fridge overnight, which I've done. So we'll get that when it's time for the filling. For now, let's start on the dough, because the dough also needs to rest in the fridge for either an hour or overnight. This recipe takes like 3 days, which might be why it's called Easter pie, because it takes 3 days, just like You know, Jesus going into the tomb, being there for 3 days and coming out Easter morning. I don't know why it's called Easter dessert pie. I should have looked that up, but I failed you. I didn't. I'll get that answer later. For now, we take the butter, put it in our mixing bowl with the powdered sugar, and begin slowly so you don't get this poof of powdered sugar. Okay, so you're supposed to do this until it's light and fluffy. So now we put in the egg and the egg yolk, and then we beat until smooth. That smells so good with the orange zest in there. Now we're gonna throw in the last 3 of these dry ingredients. And I'm gonna have to bring it down for the flour. And we do this until it starts to look like dough. If it looks too dry, add in a little bit of ice water. All right, looks like dough now. This dough sure is sticky. So like in our last recipe, we're gonna take this dough, divide it up a little bit. Last week it was 1/3, this time it's just gonna be 1/4. So we're gonna take 1/4 of the dough and make a disc out of it and refrigerate the 2 discs for either an hour to up to overnight. I don't have the saran wrap ready to go. Well, at least I got the dough ready in 1/4. All right, let me get that saran wrap. Then we make a disc out of the larger portion and to the fridge for an hour. Meanwhile, we'll work on the filling. Moving on to the filling. After I fill my glass up again. As I mentioned before, the first step should have been to take a 1/2 cup of the whole wheat and cover it with water and place it in the fridge overnight. The rest of the filling is salt, softened butter, more orange zest, but I got the cheese, 4 eggs, more sugar, not powdered, just regular sugar. The book says orange flower water or orange juice. Now for all the other Soprano files like me that can quote huge chunks of the series, I did get the one that says some pulp. We're also gonna have more cinnamon. We need candied citron and candied orange peel. I had to go on Amazon because nowhere in town or the whole Central Coast for that matter had these available. 1/2 cup of each. I just threw them into the same cup. Okay, so to start, we pulled this out of the fridge and I'm gonna go ahead and drain it. And then we put it into a saucepan that also has cold water until it's covered. That's pretty good. I didn't grab every grain, but I got most of them. We're gonna add the salt, bring to a simmer over medium heat, and stir occasionally for the next 20 to 30 minutes. Set your timer. Now would also be a good time to clean up the mess from the dough. I'm gonna say that's done. I'm gonna stop the timer early. Okay, it appears that I did not quite put enough water to have any left to drain, but I had this ready on standby to drain the water. This thing is dry, that's why I stopped it early. So it says put into a large bowl. I was gonna pick a small bowl, and then I remembered my mistakes from the past. It's taken me way too long in life to realize no matter how big of a bowl you think you need, you probably need a bigger bowl. Take the whole wheat, put it into a large bowl, and stir in the butter until melted, along with the orange zest. We will stir this until the butter melts completely. While I'm doing this, a quick note on room temperature. Most all of us in the industrial world have air conditioning. A lot of these recipes were written in ye olden day, before air conditioning. So you kind of have to factor in, well, what's room temperature without AC? If you're like me and you like your AC cranked up to where the room is 60 degrees, your recipe's not calling for that room temperature. We're gonna set that to the side and let it cool. In another bowl, we take the ricotta. Is it gonna plop all at once? Nope, gotta work for it. There we go. And the eggs. So we got the ricotta and the eggs, the sugar, the orange juice with some pulp, and the cinnamon. You guys are on standby. Mix all this together. You know what? I'm going to use a fork to help with the beating of the ricotta. Big old bowl of scrambled eggs. Okay, this has cooled down a bit. So we mix the two together now. I think part of the reason you want this to cool down before mixing it with the eggs is that whole nasty sweet scrambled eggs thing. We'll get it in here, disperse the heat, any residual heat that might remain. Now is when we're gonna go ahead and add in the candied fruits. I'll be honest, if you wanna skip the candied fruits, I'm not the biggest fan of them myself. I'm doing them this time because it's my first time doing the recipe. And I always like to follow a recipe the first time that I make it. But like panetones, for example, around Christmas time, I skip the candied fruit part. That looks like a whole lot of filling, but then again, last Easter pie that I made looked like it was a whole lot of filling. Now the instructions say to go ahead and cover this up and refrigerate until you're ready to use. Time to play with the dough. So we're gonna roll this out to 15 inches in diameter. Oh, actually now would be a good time to preheat the oven. Check it. All the Latino households remember to take all the stuff out of the oven. So we want to bake this at 350. Go ahead and preheat it while you're dealing with all this. It is springtime. Santa Maria is boiling hot. It's like 70 degrees in the evening, and I'm gonna be standing next to a preheating oven as a fluffy man. So this is gonna get warm. We're gonna use the same 9x3 spring foam pan that we used last time. Thank you, Cameron and Margaret, for the early housewarming present. I'm gonna spray it up. These things are amazing, by the way. If you don't have one, you should totally get one. For the most part, that came off without a hitch. And now we get it into the pan all the way. I was super inconsistent in my rolling, apparently, because there are some spots that are like really thick and then some parts that are thin. And just like Joan Rivers, you wanna get rid of all the wrinkles. Last video I used a pizza cutter and it worked out pretty well for me, so I'm gonna see if it'll work out again for me. So far so good. Oh, actually, you know what? I don't wanna cut it off yet. I wanna wait to see where these are gonna join up. Let's get the filling. So that's been refrigerating for a few minutes. Probably could have refrigerated longer. And I shouldn't have doubted, of course it fits perfectly. We're supposed to do lattice work again, like last time. Take your pizza cutter. We want to make strips. If you have one of those fettuccine cutters, that would be even better. When I added water to the dough, I might have added too much. I'm willing to accept that. It made it kind of sticky. Let's pull back every other one. Ooh, you know what? I'm not gonna be able to weave it this time. That's disappointing. Now we take the pizza cutter to cut the pizza crust. I'm going to fold over the edges a little bit so it kind of makes a bit of a crust. Sort of like a galette. Take one egg yolk with some water, a teaspoon of water to be exact. Brush the crust. This is gonna help make it all pretty and golden like. By the way, I don't know if this whole folding in the sides thing was a good idea. I'm thinking about it in hindsight and I'm realizing, what if it needs that extra height to grow upwards? Might have been a tactical error on my part. We'll see how mine turns out, and you can decide whether or not you want to do it. The oven is done preheating just in time. Carefully put it into the oven and let it be there for an hour 10-ish at 350 degrees. We will take it out, let it cool on the rack for 15 minutes, take off the side, and then let it refrigerate overnight. Yeah, that's right. This recipe takes 3 days. Just like Jesus entering the tomb and coming out on Easter. We'll see how this thing turns out. So this is how it looks an hour and 10 minutes later. As you can see, it did try to puff up past the banks, but turned out all right. I wasn't able to do the basket weave, but that's all right. So now we let it rest here for 15 minutes, pop off the sides, and let it rest in the fridge overnight. We'll see how it turns out in the morning. Time to try this. That is dense. It's solidified overnight. Ooh. All right, pie, the breakfast of champions.
For you, maybe not for me.
It's like a giant shoyadel.
I don't know what
Those-
is.
The first thing that I ever made for my show, the things that were supposed to look like lobster tails. I mean, it's basically the same filling. Pretty much, it's just now baked into a pie, which makes it delicious. Goes well with the coffee. It's another recipe for the win column. So happy Palm Sunday. Try this out for Easter next week. I'm gonna skip next week. We'll be back the week after Easter, and we'll be going finally into episode 8 of The Sopranos. My social medias are scrolling at the bottom. Let me know how this turned out for you. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And until next time, manja.